Hello, hello. Welcome to Courage Becomes Her, where we connect and share real life stories. I'll talk with women whom I love and am inspired by, women who are experiencing life just like you and me. I'm excited for us to gather together and cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in life and work. Well, hello, friends. Well, if you listened to Tuesday's episode, you know that the cat is out of the bag and that we are doing an entire summer of bonus episodes for Courage Becomes Her, our Summer Reads series with women authors who have new books coming out this summer. So this week, we continue that Summer Read series with Rachel Joy Baribeau. So Rachel has an incredible and impressive resume. She is an award-winning storyteller, an inspirational speaker, a sought-after teacher, a national movement maker, and a former ceiling-shattering national sportscaster. Wow, so impressive. She has a bachelor's degree from Auburn University in radio, television, and film. And she also hosts the Joy Starters podcast. And you'll hear us talk today about the Joy Starters. So when Rachel isn't traveling to speak or to teach, she loves taking naps, dancing in her kitchen, museums and history, and trying to spread joy on a daily basis, which she absolutely does. She says that of all of the titles that she goes by, she loves wife and bonus mom the most. She and her family and their 4 children live in Florida. And I am just so excited to talk with Rachel today about her new book, Relentless Joy: Finding Freedom, Passion, and Happiness, even when you have to fight for it. So this is such a gritty book, and this is such a real and raw book. And our conversation today is just so beautiful and so rich and covers some really, really hard topics. So Rachel basically has journeyed through drug addiction, domestic violence, abuse, depression, death of her parents, and all of these just tragic things, many of which created trauma for her. And through her book, and you'll hear in our conversation today, she talks about how God turned her mess into a message and how she is on a mission to help all of us to grow through our pain and find joy, and then to use our experiences to speak love and to speak life into other people. And I just love through this conversation today, she shares so many wonderful stories. You can tell why she is an award-winning storyteller, and just really breathes life into us through the conversation as well as through the book. So thank you so much for listening to today's conversation with Rachel. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today for this bonus episode of Courage Becomes Her. I'm really grateful to have you with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. Thank you. So we're going to talk about your new book, Relentless Joy, in just a moment, but let's get to know you a little bit first. So tell us about where is home and what does family life look like for you?
Yeah, so home is in Yulee, Florida, and it's near Amelia Island. It's as far northeast as you can get in Florida before you hit Georgia. And it's a blessing. And near Jacksonville, for those that know where the bigger cities are, but it's a blessing. I got married a year and a half ago, and I married into 4 beautiful bonus children, age 12, 14, 15, and 18, 2 boys, 2 girls. So I got a ready-made family. And I like to joke and tell people that, I was only responsible for myself and a dog before. So there are times where I just want to run away and cry. So I got thrown right into the fire, but I'm very grateful.
Yes. Yeah. That is a big transition for
Yes.
sure. So, and you guys still do have some fur babies as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yes. I have a little fur. I have two fur kitties and a fur baby. He's at the neighbors right now. That's his we laugh and say it's a secondary home. And they have joint custody of him, but he's a little Pomeranian mix and he's 14 and he's a love of my life. I've always loved every one of my dogs, but this one came into my life about 8 months before my mom passed away of cancer. And so he was really an extra gift because he gave us all something to focus on besides cancer. And then for about a year afterwards, he was my legitimate certificate from the internet. He was my legitimate therapy dog. He traveled with me to sporting when I would speak at colleges, and literally he would get passed around the room to anybody who loved dogs, and it was just the best. Like I'd see him in the room getting passed around, people loving on him, and wherever he went, he just made friends, and it was beautiful. But now he's a little bit older and a little bit grouchier. And so, and I'm better by the grace of God. And so he stays home these days and he stays spoiled.
Oh, that's so sweet. So sweet. And the cats do show up in your book a little bit as well with their antics, which is fun.
Yes, they do. Antics is the right word when you have kitties.
Yes, it is. Yep, I can relate for sure. All right, what's a current obsession of yours, Rachel?
That is a good one. Being in touch with myself. It's been an obsession for me for a while, just being in touch with what I need, who I am, speaking kindly to myself. What do you need today, Rachel? Do you need a nap? Do you need a workout? Do you need to work more? Do you need to go touch your husband? Do you need to tell your kids you love them? Do you need to apologize? It's really the basis of the book, and it's a way I've been living. I wouldn't say it's current. It's current because it's happening currently, but it's been percolating for a while, and it's why I wrote the book. And it's really just being in touch with myself at the deepest part of my soul. Like, am I eating crappy lately? Do I need some fresh whole food? Do I need sunshine? Do I need to walk outside? The other day I was like, I talk about God all the time. I said this on a podcast. I said, but I haven't been in my Bible in a week, or 2 weeks. And so I recognized that at that moment in time, I needed more Jesus, more word. And so I think what I'm currently obsessed with living this life with everything that I got and not wasting a day. And that really does take being honest with yourself where you are limited and where you can grow. And then also saying, hey, listen, I'm really great at this, and celebrating yourself in other areas.
That's so beautiful. And you do all of those things just as
you.
a fly on the wall. It's beautiful to watch that in your life. So love that so much. So it probably corresponds to what you've just said, but what has filled your cup lately?
So you would think that being an author and being busy with being an author, maybe people would think either way. But my mom read to me when I was in the womb. And I do believe that that's part of why I love books so much. I was just talking with my marketing team about how the next kind of phase of what we're doing with with the book, I should say, is we're going to be doing donations where people can donate books for kids in schools. Think about if you went to the book fair and you couldn't afford a book, or your mom sent you a $5 or $10 and only bought you could only buy one book, or maybe you were the kid that couldn't afford it. And so we want to be able to do that. So currently, and recently, what's filling my cup is reading. And I find myself, I'm either reading a ton or I'm not reading at all. There's no in between. And since December, I have been voraciously reading, like a book a week. Like, we're talking about that kind of clip. And awesome. So Jojo Moyes and The Girls in the Stilt House, and fiction and nonfiction. And then I'm also very interested in African American studies, particularly Reconstruction, Civil War, pre-Civil War. I'm a history buff in my spare time. I visited here in Amelia Island. It's a darker part of the island that people don't want to tell you about, but we have a site that's a UNESCO World Heritage Site that was where the Middle Passage happened, where they brought in slaves, where the slave trade was outlawed, and they would still bring in slaves and they would smuggle them to other states. And I found it, and it was not really, listed or highly publicized. And I found it, and I went and sat out there with my dog a couple of weeks ago, and we just sat, and there's a bench that overlooks the water. And if you get really quiet and really introspective, you can just imagine the people there that many years ago that were brought there that had no idea what was happening, that were just, taken and kidnapped across an ocean and then into a life that is just even unfathomable and horrific. And so, yeah, I'd say I'm very interested in that time of history. I would say that with a caveat that I'm interested in what happened so that I can hopefully never, ever never repeat these types of things. However, slavery and all of these different issues are showing up today. I don't want anybody to think I have like a morbid fascination with it by any means. It's just it's interesting to me. And I'll tell people that because I think we need to remember what happened in our history, and so that we're not doomed to repeat it.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. I'm 100% on board with that. And I learned from your post that you shared of that visit. I had no idea about that, which was so fascinating.
I didn't know either. Like I had no idea, and I had no idea. And I got to tell other people, and people said, I had no idea. And it was just a solemn moment. And it was an ode to everybody who came through there, the people that were left there, just all the things. And there's a chapter in my book, and I'm a sold out believer, but I'm also Native American. I'm also, so I'm very, I think about, Mother Earth and the connection and all of these things. And there's a chapter in the book where I talk about my ancestors and your ancestors. Yeah. And I have a shirt that says, I am the product of my ancestors' prayers and dreams. And, you think about your great grandmother 10 generations back. You'll never meet her, until we get to heaven. But you may have her dimples. You may have her smile. You may have the twinkle in your eyes. You may, your laugh may be the same. And, consequently, in thinking about that and writing the book and having this moment that I had, I won't give it away too much in the book, but having this moment where I felt like, it's called storage love, where I felt like I was being looked at by generations back of my family all at once. And being an orphan, I have bonus parents and step parents, but my parents are in heaven. It really was just a solemn moment. But I want people to take away from that chapter in life, if they're listening to your podcast, your awesome listeners, that your grandparents went through too much for you to live on the sidelines or not living or not going after life or forgiving or going for that job or that mate or moving or whatever it is. They likely went, if you think about it, famine, war, slavery, displacement, food. I mean, all the different things that they went through, right? For you to even be alive today. That's right. And one last note on that. I don't think I talked about it in the book. Maybe I'll do it in the next book because I'm already thinking about that. But my mom was late from a sleepover when she was 13, and she missed the plane to go flying with her father, and her father died in that plane crash. And so had my mother been on that plane, there would be no me. There would be no my mama at 14, 15, 16, and, subsequent years. And so you think about those things, and it really, and it just kind of plugs you into life and going, I better get busy living.
That's right. Oh, that's so good. So good. Well, we're going to definitely unpack that more in a minute when we talk more specifically about your book. So last question for us to get to know you. So you talked about reading, that you love to read. So what is a book that has transformed your life?
Oh my gosh. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. It is, it's a good one. It's amazing. It's thick. It's like 700 pages long. I've read from the author about how she never intended to write a book that was 700 pages long, a novel, but it talks about a family all the way back from the Native American days to current days. And it's a Black family in the South and all the things that they went through. And it was just, it was phenomenal. That one's a big one. I would also highly recommend to anybody. I did a meeting the other day, and it was so neat to be able to turn people on to him. Og Mandino.
Yeah.
My mom, I grew up on Og Mandino, but a lot of people have no idea who he is. And I'm like, I feel like it's my goal to tell people who Og Mandino is, quite possibly one of the greatest motivational speakers and writers there ever was.
Yeah.
He lost his, job. He lost his family. He was an alcoholic and he was down on his luck, and literally so down on his luck. And he got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and ended up in the library reading everything that he could get his hands on. And he ends up becoming one of the best-selling authors and motivational speakers in the history of the history,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I love that you talk about him in the book and his influence. I read him as well as a late teen, early 20 something,
Yeah.
and yeah, definitely very inspirational for sure. So, well, thank you so much for letting us get to know you a little bit. So, relentless joy, finding freedom, passion, and happiness, even when you have to fight for it, is the title of your new book and first book.
First published book. I have an ebook
Okay.
that was just, small little sample. But yes, first published book, and it comes out in 5 days.
Yes. Yeah. And when it'll be live, it'll be released when this conversation goes
yay.
out as well. So that's super fun. So much that we can talk about, but I think where I'd like for us to start, you have a quote that you say in there. You say, if we let it, death, destruction, and depression will back us into a dark and desolate corner. And your story is a hard one. Domestic violence, abuse, as you've already mentioned, multiple deaths within your family, parental death, addiction, etc. So tell us just how courage came into play for you. I love how you say in the book that you had to kind of crawl out of that corner. So what happened to help you to crawl out of those multiple corners, really?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the book is I don't really know a ton of other books on joy that are so gritty, that are so
Mm-hmm.
raw, that are so
Yeah.
gritty, maybe other than the Bible. Like literally
Yes.
the Bible is the ultimate book on joy and persevering. Um, That's such a good question. At the very base of it, I would say it was faith.
Mm.
God was always with me through the addiction, through the abuse, through all of the death, all of that, and He was calling me to something greater, and calling me to something higher and better way of living, and living for Him and living full of Him. But I would also say there's an element, and I say this in the book, there's an element of work that you have to do, that any human being has to do on your own.
Mm.
Um, I call it the shovel, your spiritual shovel in the book. Nothing good happens without hard work and without work on yourself. And oftentimes, I said it in the book as well. My mom used to say a wound will get worse before it gets better.
Mm.
And, going to therapy is harder before it gets better.
Yeah.
Mending the fence with somebody is harder before it gets better. Forgiving yourself is harder before it gets better, right?
Yeah.
It's usually is. And there was a point in time where I started on this journey of self-love. And I think, I'm not going to give you the worldly perspective of that. It wasn't a mantra. It wasn't something I repeated to myself. And that's all great and fine. But a
Yeah.
deep, profound understanding of the fact that I'm a miracle. You're a miracle.
Mm.
That God did not take the day off and go to the heavenly Panera the day you were created. Like
That's
he
right.
didn't cut bait and be like, oh, that one's a little messed up there, like, ooh, a little
Yeah.
defective there. He didn't. And so there was that kind of slow realization of that. I had gotten clean. I had begun to live for Him, like truly live for Him in waiting, for my husband, and dating as a single, Christian person, all these different things. So I would like to say he was kind of peeling layers off of me. And I
Mm.
got to this place about a year before I met my husband, where it was, God, if that never happens for me, you are enough.
Yeah.
You're enough. And I want to share that message with other people. Yes, we all have desires of our heart. I have crazy desires in my heart, but I was just telling my best friend this morning, and I said, but if not, it is well with my soul.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. I
Yeah.
love that so
Yeah.
much. Hi, friends. Just interrupting super quick with two things. First, Revel, the publishers of Rachel's new book, are giving away 2 copies of Relentless Joy to the Courage Becomes Her listeners. So all that you need to do to win a copy for yourself is go to my Instagram, Laurel Emery on Instagram, for the Friday, June 23rd post, and the instructions of how to win, the details of how to win a copy are right there. It's super easy. All you have to do is basically just tag and follow. And that's it. So I look forward to having you have an opportunity to win a copy. And will you also think about the woman in your life who has had addiction, abuse, or depression as part of her journey? I know and totally confident that Rachel's story can really help that woman in your life. So thanks so much for sharing, and let's get back to the conversation with Rachel. You alluded to it, but there are a couple of things that you talk about in the book. One, you say crushing circumstances are basically a means of preparation. Talk a little bit more about kind of what you mean by that. And it obviously connects very much with what you've just shared about yourself and your journey.
Yeah, I think for sure that was it came to light and really came to be apparent when you visiting Israel, in 2018 and understanding, that the olives and how they need to be crushed and pressed, and the grapes have to be crushed and pressed for the wine, right? And understanding that and seeing these things. Like, I just have to tell a little side story because we're doing it in my book launch team right now, like the backstory behind the backstory and showing the pictures and things. And we were at the Garden of Gethsemane, and the olive trees, the 2,000-year-old olive trees they've got a fence up around them. You can just see them, right?
Wow.
And but you can almost reach out and touch them, but you can't go in. And you're just like, wow, like they believe Jesus sat up underneath one of these trees. Like, it's just amazing, right? And all of a sudden, I feel like I might get arrested for telling this story, by the way. All of a sudden, this gardener, and he was like, "Psst, come over here," and I'm like, I've got a holy, like, I've got they say in the holy places in Israel, like, cover your head, like, be pious, those things. And so I go over and I'm like, and I'm away from my group. There's like 30 people in my group. And he's like, you want a little bark off the tree? And I'm like, what?
And my gosh.
And again, I'm looking around thinking I'm going to get arrested at any moment. Like, I remember going back to the airport wondering if I was going to get, arrested for this. And then I'm thinking he's, of course, going to ask me for money, whatever. And the miracle would have it, he says, look, I'm from a long generation of gardeners here. My grandfather's grandfather gardened here. Like, it's like a rite of, it's what we do, the Garden of Gethsemane. And I watch him go over and do a little bark off of the tree, like the tree, and he hands it to me, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I am just blown away. I'm ashamed, but I coveted it, I protected it, and I got it home, and it sits in a shadow box in my house, and it's one of my most precious, things. And I'm not really big on things, but I don't make them an idol, I should say. But yes, there's an element of that. I say this when I speak. I have learned the most about myself, not on the mountaintop, not when I was winning, when I was face down in the mud, when I had nothing, when I was crushed, when I was at my absolute lowest. That's when I learned the most about myself and about who was walking with me. Yeah.
That's so good. I love that so much. What I really appreciate, and this is a conversation that the Courage Becomes Her community has regularly, is you say your pain is not only for you. And that element of inviting other people into your life, into your pain, with the intention of, I think you also say it as far as like using your trauma as mission is another way that you say it. And I appreciate that so much, that you are willing to share all of that, not for this reason of, here, look at me, I want to show you all this horrible, hard life that I've had, but that you want to say you're not alone in
Yes.
what your pain is, your trauma is, your story is. So tell us just a little bit more about that and how you came to have that perspective and how you've seen it bless others.
Yeah, I think there's a central idea underneath all of it, and it's really easy. It's bitter or better,
Hmm.
bitter or better.
Yeah.
I can let something make me bitter, or I
Yeah.
can let it make me better. And that is the choice, and that is it. And I can be mad about it. I can dwell on it. I'm a big believer and proponent of feeling your feelings and
Hmm.
and processing them. I'm not a toxic positivity person. I'm not a stuff it down person.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you feel bitter, let's sit with the feeling and understand why you're feeling bitter, but then let's let it pass. Let's process that so that we can learn a lesson from it and we can move forward. I do also believe your greatest pain is tied to your greatest purpose. I do believe I'll teach about it in the book that there are many people that are out there serving and they're
Hmm.
serving just to serve. And I would never want to dissuade anybody from serving. However, if you're not serving in your sweet spot, you're more than likely to burn out. And you're just
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't want to go back to that soup kitchen. I've already done that 5 times. Well, if you can find what your thing is, like what really gets you in the gut of your soul, right? The bottom of your soul and like lights you up, you won't ever stop serving. You won't ever stop going and giving back, because that's your thing. And so maybe you were, had abuse in your household growing up. Maybe you go and volunteer at a domestic violence shelter. I had one player tell me I saw homeless twins underneath the bridge growing up every day going to school. He said, I because of that, I've never forgotten them. I want to start a homeless shelter,
Hmm.
and so another player said, I have an autistic sister. I want to get noise canceling headsets in the stadium so that, people with sensory issues can enjoy the games.
Hmm.
So instead of looking at your pain and your trauma as something that weighs you down, you ask yourself bitter or better, but you also ask yourself, is there any way I can serve out of this pain?
Yeah.
Because if you are bold enough to share it, I can guarantee you, because I can tell you it's happened to me thousands of times over. I can guarantee you there's somebody in your path that's just waiting on you to be honest about it, waiting on you to say, I've been there, so they can say, me too,
Yeah.
or, oh, wow. Oh, I would have never known that about you. And it helps really foster a sense of openness, vulnerability, and a safe place for other people to take off their mask and be real.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. So, you've started kind of multiple movements
Mhm.
over the last decade or so. So, one of them is the Joy Starters Club.
Yeah.
So, tell a little bit about that. And you have in each chapter of the book, you have a joy starter that really helps us to kind of take this journey of healing, of moving toward joy. So connect those dots a little bit for us.
Did you like that? Did you like that? Because I like that, but I'm the
I love
writer,
it.
I'm the
I personally
author.
love having the prompts that, help you to think about, each of the ways that we can, move toward whatever it is in that particular chapter. So yes, I loved that
Okay,
personally.
good. That's so good for me to hear as the author, the feedback,
Yes.
because I've read books before and it's like, then I'm at the end of it and I'm like, okay, now go,
Now what?
now,
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
why I wanted to do that. And I also fought, by the way, for the journal space at the back of the book. So when you get the physical copy,
Mhm.
there's journal space at the back. So you can literally flip from that joy start to the back of the book and write and start writing. My hope is
Yes.
it's going to be used. This book is going to be used at some small groups at a big church in Nashville. I want it to,
Mm.
hopefully explode on the small groups scene because I think it can be used in groups. It can be used in book clubs. It can be used
Agreed.
by yourself. I like to refer to the book as one part memoir, one part journal, one part self-help, one part faith,
Yeah.
and a little bit of a workbook. It's a lot of
Yeah.
different things. And I'll also say this really quickly about the book before I mention the joy starters is that I wrote the book with every person in mind, meaning I knew that there were going to be people that read this book that have no faith,
Yeah.
that don't believe, are mad at God, hate God, see God as a vengeful, angry, being. There's some people that are going to have other faiths, that some people are just don't even know what they believe, and then some people are believers. And so I said in the beginning of the book that, it's one of my favorite lines, and a lot of people apparently love it too, where I said, at the very least, I hope you leave this book and you're curious about this Jesus guy and that you think he was a really rad dude,
Yeah.
because he was. And people always giggle when I say Jesus was a rad dude, but he was a dude at one time and he is rad, And so I've had a lot of people tell me, I really like how you did that, Rachel, because you didn't beat me over the head with your faith.
Yeah.
You didn't make me like, I wasn't like, oh, another book about, I didn't immediately shut down if I didn't have faith or mad at God or believe something different. I didn't say, oh, well, this is not for me. You did it in a really inviting way. And I think the other thing with that's great is that I used the analogy of the lunch line. And originally I was saying, take the square pizza or the hash browns, or the hot milk and, leave the rest. And my girlfriend said, no, not leave the rest. Take what you need and share the rest,
Yes,
right? Like
yes.
maybe that chapter, maybe the chapter on purity is not for you, but it could be for your daughter. It could be for your granddaughter. It could be for your neighbor child, like you don't know who that chapter's for. So not everything's going to be for everybody. And I understand that, but I did really write the book thinking we are the world, really like thinking about the full gamut of living being people,
Yes.
creatures, miracles. Yeah. So that's that. And then the Joy Starts, I'm also very proud of that. Kind of created it. And it was the idea of it is a jump start for your car, but a joy start for your soul. Yes. And so we even created like little buttons that say Joy Starter.
Oh, I love that.
We had created a club, 6 months before the book came out, and it's joystartersclub.com. It's the cost of a cup of coffee a month, and you get these prompts to your phone that make you think each month's like a different theme, like self-care, dreaming, different things like that. And then we have a monthly meeting, and then you get some swag. You get a physical journal, like an old school physical journal mailed to you in the mail. And so, yeah, it's so neat. And like now I'm working on nobody steal this now, but I'm working on trademarking the word. And yeah. And the cool thing about the pen is it was born, the legend of the pen. It was born because my stepdad, my brother, and I had avoided going to Jackson Hole, where it was one of my favorite places, my mom's favorite place, our favorite place. We've been going for 20 years. And we avoided it after she passed away out of fear that it was going to be too hard.
Yeah.
And when we finally went back, we found what I teach about in the book and so many people find. We avoid these places because we think they're going to be so hard, but actually they're the most beautiful places.
Oh, so good.
And she was on the wind and she was in the air and she was on the trail and she was at the ice cream shop and she was everywhere. And so we are on this trail, her favorite trail. And I see this little girl with a button that says kindness. And we passed her by on the trail, and all these things have been happening, like these little God winks to let me know that my mom was there with us. And so I passed the girl back as we're, coming off the trail. And I said to her, hey, baby, I love that pen. And her mom, she looks up at her mom, and her mom looks down at her, and they kind of get teary eyed. And she said, you know what to do. And the little girl takes the pen off and she handed it to me. And she said, the legend of the pen goes that if anybody compliments on your kindness, you have to give it away.
Wow.
And so we've just got these are brand new. And the hope of the Joy Starter pen is the same thing happens. You wear it. Somebody says, what's a Joy Starter? Boom, you give away your joy. You might leave it for somebody when you're paying for their coffee. You might leave it on somebody's, that's having a hard time. You might say, I just want to give you some joy. It's just something I'm thinking, And so hopefully the buttons, the pens grow in the same way of that kindness button. And we learn to be joy starters and give away our joy.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And we need that right now more than ever, don't we?
Yes, yes we do.
So good. I just as a side note, I love also that you talk about, and I think I don't remember what section it's in, but you talk about how we are healed through hugs. And that is just so beautiful to me that is a joy start for so many of us, especially with just the hardships that we've been through as a world over the last 3 years in particular, and just your reminder of how important it is for us to hug one another in
Yes.
sincerity and to share that joy through a hug, that healing through a hug.
And I got to tell you very briefly, just yesterday, speaking of that, I put this on social media. I haven't shared it on all my social media yet, but I stop in this Dollar General and I teach people in the book, go deep with people, go beyond the surface level stuff. And so I'm checking out and I start talking to this gal and her name's Ashley and she's got beautiful ginger hair. She's got blue eyes. And we start talking and I said, she said, I'm getting off soon. I said, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your day? And she said, I'm going to go get in the pool. And I said, oh, that sounds awesome. And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, and I said, I'm about to launch a book next week. And she went, what? And she gave me a high five. Well, that then started something. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's so awesome. I said, well, I think I've got like a bookmark in the car with all the information. And she was like, okay. I said, I'll be right back. So I put the stuff in the car and I came back. She had come out from behind the counter and was waiting on me at the door. And I think she went first and it doesn't matter, but she like grabs me and hugs me. She didn't even like wait. And she held on and then I held on and we were two strangers 30 seconds ago, a minute ago, hanging on to each other in the Dollar General, doorway, blocking the doorway, just hugging. And I just grabbed her and hugged her. And I said, you got, just encouraged her. And that was it. Like, I don't, and I left. I said, I hope to see you soon, Ashley. And that's it. Like, that's the story of the hug. And
I love it. Oh, that's so good.
Cool. It made me tear up all over again.
Yes. No, that is so beautiful. I love that so much. Oh, well, you are most definitely inspiring courage and joy in us, especially with first time, published book with Relentless Joy. So who or what is inspiring courage in you at this moment as you're launching this book to the world?
My mom and grandmother. I can feel them walking around me. I can feel them I feel like God has let them. I always say, I don't know how heaven works, but I think that like in my mind, at least, like they get hall passes and they get to come see you, like, yes. Like getting their little heavenly bug and come down and, spend a day or two and then they get to go back. Cause I think that heaven is so lovely that, this idea that they're with us all the time. No, I think they're surrounding the throne. I think they're saying, holy, holy, holy. I think they're enjoying heaven. Right. But I do think that they get a hall pass and I think they get to come see us sometimes. And I just feel my mom and my grandmother and I were very close. They were super close. And then I was always really close, as I mentioned in the book, with my grandmother. And then when my grandmother passed away, my mom and we got this chance for the last 7 years of her life to be like the soulmates that my grandmother and I were. And so just the three of us together, 3 generations, were very powerful. And we had so much love for each other and so much love for people. And so where I learned my love for people, at Christmas time, my grandmother would get hundreds and hundreds of Christmas cards. And I didn't understand it until I got older, but they were from prostitutes and soldiers and lawyers and mayors and country music stars. She did not, she just loved people and she loved you no matter where you were. And funny enough, my grandmother was a bartender and, she was raised Catholic. And then later on in her life, she always loved God. And then she worried she wasn't in church enough. And, and all these things. And I finally, I got to witness her really come to the realization that she'd always loved God. She'd always been a witness, that it may have been, unconventional, so to speak, but she was an angel behind that bar to so many people. And so what's giving me courage is that I can feel them walking with me right now as I embark on this. And, I just am reveling in that. I can feel them saying, my girl from heaven, you did it. And one last thing that is just so great. I signed up for therapy the other day, no accidents, no coincidences. And I was speaking to this woman who was going to get me to the right people. And we started to talk and we connected. Her name was Deborah. And she was just, she wasn't even supposed to give me a counseling session. We just started to talk as two human beings. And she said, Rachel, you've got a lot going on, a lot of wonderful things. She said, you're walking in one of the greatest seasons of your life. You've spent 2.5 years writing this book. It's a very vulnerable book. It's very scary for you, but it's beautiful. And she said, do you remember when Moses parted the Red Sea? And I said, yeah. And she said, but do you remember the part where his arms got tired and they held up his arms? And I said, no, I never focused on that part. And she said, go and let people hold up your arms. And she said, you're about to be in places in Nashville and Birmingham, places where people love you and they know you. And she said, go and let them hold up your arms and be where your feet are, Rachel. And savor this and let them love you. And that one got me. Yeah. Deborah was right where she was meant to be that night and sharing that with me. So I'm going to go and I'm going to be where my feet are. I'm going to feel my people from heaven. I'm going to feel God's love and I'm going to let people hold my arms up.
I love that. That's so good. So good.
Well, that's not all over your podcast.
I love it. I love the real. I love the raw. And that is what it's all about, of having that relentless joy, but when we have to fight for it, and you are fighting for it.
Because we have to fight for it.
Yeah.
Life is not pretty. It's not easy. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. We have to fight for it.
Yes.
We do.
We do. We do. Well, thank you for fighting for it for yourself and for us as well. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Couldn't you just sit and listen to her tell stories all day? I mean, seriously, I just loved our conversation, and she just has this library of stories within her that are so incredibly interesting and inspiring and encouraging and insightful. So I just love that. So there were quite a few things that Rachel and I did not have the opportunity to cover from her book, one of which is, and we kind of alluded to it, but she is a mental health advocate, and she actually started a movement on college campuses around mental health and the stigma around, or stigmas and the shame around mental health. And we know that suicide is a huge topic right now and an issue amongst college age students. And so I would certainly welcome and invite and encourage any of you who have mental health as a focus in your life, or you have college kids, or, are involved in college work in some way or another, that this book will definitely be helpful for that. And the I'm Changing the Narrative is the name of the movement that is on college campuses that you'll want to become familiar with as well. So please connect with Rachel. Her website, Instagram, all of her social are linked in the show notes for you. Become a joy starter. She's just such a joyful person and a truly genuine and authentic person. And I'm so delighted to have her as a part of my life and greater friendship circle. So thank you for listening. If you missed last week's book summer reads bonus episode with Jennifer Dukes-Lee, we talk about her newest book that is Stuff I'd Only Tell God, a guided journal. So definitely check out that conversation. It's really fun. We talk about bird watching, which for those of us, I think that she says, and I agree with her, there's some age that you hit when you actually start to become interested in birds, which is just so fun. And if you missed Tuesday's regular episode, this week's episode is about launching your kids to college. You're not going to want to miss that conversation with my friend Stephanie Chen. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back with you next Friday for another bonus episode of the Summer Read series. What an honor to help you to cultivate confidence, courage, and joy in your life and work. Thank you so much for inviting me to journey with you. I look forward to being back with you next week, where we'll hear another story from a woman whom I love and am inspired by and look forward to learning from.